So guys, how are you? Last time we were checking states management, but we looked at it at the minimalistic perspective, whereby we looked on the use state hook that's managing states, maybe in a component or in a page. But we said that one has a disadvantage, and it leads to something called props drilling. And for that, I had introduced about using Redux Toolkit, whereby you configure the store, and from the store we defined some actions which you use to them to manipulate the value of our counter. Now today I wanted us to look at the point whereby you are dealing with APIs. Maybe you want to fetch a data from a certain API. Maybe that data is going to be used across the application, and you don't want to keep on calling the API. So you can call it at a central point and manipulate that data at any point in the application. So today I want us to look at that. And with that one set, we can now begin. If I open my terminal, I CD desktop, I CD YouTube, I CD states management. Then with there, I can now open with the VS Code, our code like that. Then opening on the VS Code, I'm going to use the repo that I used last time. Only that, okay, you can just use it. So I can npm run dev, so that you can maybe start the application and start the process. Now I can now open Chrome. I'm going to use this account. Then from there I'm going to open localhost 3000. Then I can now open my VS Code and see what has happened here. See whether there was an error. There was no error last time. It's still compiling. The compiling has gone through properly. So that was what we did last time, but we passed the data using props to control this. Maybe we tried to display this one using a different component, which really worked. But we say this kind of maneuvering, it brings to props drilling when you're using use states. That's the reason why we introduced Redux Toolkit. So we passed through that, and I thought if I go a little bit deeper, it will be much better to help people who are interested with building good and big systems. So with that said, I'm going to use a certain API from JSON typical posts. I'm going to use this API, and for that reason, we said that the first thing you do, you define your store here. But you see, I have already defined the store, and we have already defined a slice. This was to deal with the actions for incrementing and decrementing. For that reason, I'm going to create another slice called post slice.ts. Now this one is going to deal with the post. So how am I going to navigate that? I'm going to say const URL. We are going to use this URL here. I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to display it there. Then with that, I'm going to import. Can say we want first two functions. The first one is const export const fetch post, that way. Then create async thunk, which is this one will receive we call it post. We can give it some parameter. First fetch post. This one is just the same as NGRX. If you have been used to Angular, the NGRX, there is a way we define the effect, the actions, the reducers. So here we just define that way: fetch post. Then that one is going to give us a callback function, which is asynchronous. Then we are going to say this callback function is going to return, is going to const response is equals to fetch is equals to await So this one returns a promise, fetch URL, then return response.json, that way. But you see, this one is going to fetch post in multitude. But we also wanted to look at the scenario whereby maybe there are different kind of users across the application, or maybe in your server, and you want to access them, or a particular kind of a post or anything, you want to access it using an ID, and you want to store it maybe in the Redux Toolkit. Probably is going to be used across the application multiple times, and for that reason we could have just fetched these posts, then we store them in a place like a local storage or a session storage. Then you can maybe be manipulating the post using an ID. But the goal of this tutorial today is to learn how to fetch, how to work with APIs, and Redux Toolkit. So I would choose if we directly fetch the post uniquely from the internet using its unique ID. So for that reason, I'm going to create another function called const fetch single user is equals to fetch single post is equals to createAsyncThunk fetch post 1 single, like that. Then here I can say async, of course it's going to be an ID with the type of number. Then here I'm going to, it's just the same const response, it will be await fetch isn't template literal ID. Then here I'm going to give it an ID that way. With that one said, when we look at our data here, we need to define the types of this data. So how do we do that? We come now here at the root of our application, we click outside, then we add something called the types. We add a folder called the types. Rename, let me rename it. Rename it to types, that way. Then here I'm going to say post.ts. Supposed to be, let me say one post, so that because I'm going to be having a page called that way, I don't want to bring conflicts. Post.ts, then we say interface single post, interface post, that way. Then this is going to do what? It's going to have a user ID which is a number. I'm going to have an ID of the post which is also going to be a number, the post ID. Then this user ID is maybe probably the person who posted that post. Then title is going to be a string. Then body is also going to be a string, that way. Then I can say export, I can say we will still need something called initial state, and I wanted it to define it here, but let me show you how we do it. Let me first export type iPost, that way. Now we have exported this. If I come now here to post, if I come here, we need something called const initial state. The initial states of our data, our initial states. So how do we do that? We have defined the initial state. This is like a container that is going to host the states. So we need to give it a type. So back to our post.ts, we can now say interface I post states. This one set, we need something, we need a post. There will be multiple. So I'm going to have post. Then this is going to be of type post, type iPost, like that. Going to be an array. Then we're going to have a status to track what is happening to our API when you are calling. So we are going to be either the API is loading, the API has succeeded, that is in loading the data, or the API has failed with that. Then with that, I'm going to have an error. This error may either be null or there might be a string. Now I need also a single post for the case whereby we are fetching data using an ID. Single post. This single post is going to either be iPost or null for the case whereby there is no post in the single post. So how do we do that? I can maybe export that, and with that one set, I can come now back to our post slice and I can import iSlice, iPost. That way, with that one imported, I can now say const initial state iPost stays like that. Then is equals to what? Is equals to post. We are going to be, of course, an array. Then status, the default status is going to be loading. Then single post is going to be null in the beginning because we are assuming this data originally is empty. Then we can have error, which is going to be null. Now with that one set, I can say const post slice. I can now write post slice here is equals to create slice name post, and I have something like initial state. Then with initial state, I have something like reducers. But for this case, we are going to work with something called extra reducers, which is going to receive an arrow function like that, and the parameter is called the builder. Now I'm going to define my builder there. That builder, I'm going to add something called add cases. Now this add cases is going to track what is happening to our APIs. You are calling data from the net, so from the internet. So the first API to call is fetch post like that. So it can either be pending, then we have a state, of course, and this state is going to return. If it's pending state dot status has to be loading. Then of course state dot error has to be null like that. Man, what is the case if this data is not pending? This data has been fulfilled. So what happens? Here I'm going to add something called action, and we are going to give it a type which is called action, which is called payload action. iPost first I import it like that. I don't know if yes, it has been imported. iPost, which is going to be an array, then you can close like that. Then this status is going to be succeeded. That. Then state.post is going to be action.payload. Then state.error is going to be null. Now this one has worked. What about if there is a failure in the API? Maybe you never provided proper token, or maybe the token has expired. We say fetch post failed, fetch post rejected. Then we can now remove this. There is no need of that. I can show you, or I can maybe return it that way. Let me remove it. Rejected. Then I can maybe remove this. There is no need of this. Then with that, I can say status failed. State.post. can say state.error is equals to error is equals to action dot error dot message, or if that one is not available, can say something went wrong when calling the API. Oh, something went wrong. There's no need of including that. Then can now remove this like that, and everything is okay. But you see now this one, what this one is doing is fetching multiple posts. Let us now look at the scenario whereby we are fetching single post. How do we do that? We copy this, it's just the same thing. Then we comment here, we say fetching single post. Fetching single post. That one set. We can now come and remove this. We say can now remove this. We change fetch single post that way. Then with this we can now remove this array iPost. Then this one is going to be single post. Post fulfilled. Let me see. Let's see. Then this is going to return. I had made this mistake. It's going to return response.json that way, and that mistake has vanished. That way. And you can now check if everything is okay. Everything is okay. You can now come and export our slice so that we can maybe access it. Export default post slice. That one set, we can now go to our store, can maybe import post slice, and of course you can say post slice dot reducer that way. With that one set, how do we now this? That one set, with that one set, everything is okay. Now if you look at our application, whether it's really running, everything is okay. Can terminate that, and I go back to page. From here I copy this, and I remove this dispatch, and I say what? Navigate to post page. Then from here I can give it maybe a margin top of 3 rem. That one set, everything is okay. We need to come up now with a page that is now going to deal with the posts. You can now come here and I say post. From there we can maybe come up with a page called post dot, going to be page dot ts, like that. That one set, we can maybe use capital letter, say post that way. Let us now style this. Let us first come back to our initial page. Then we say import use router. Use router. Use router from next navigation. That one set can now come here and say const router is equals to use router. That way, const router is equals to use router. Then I can now come here and say router dot push. Where are we pushing? We are changing page to another page called post. That one said we can maybe do a test of what is happening. So if I go now to this, I don't know, I clicked what there. If I come back here, post, then I say post here. Just write nonsense there. You can say diff post. See, everything there is okay. Everything is okay. But now I can now say class age is equals to screen, then wind is equals to full, then justify center. Then this cannot work unless we give it a flex. Then with that one I can now say h3 class, of course, is going to be text 5xl, then it's going to be font semi-bold, and I'm going to be navigate. It's going to be what? To be post. Yes, there's no need of giving it a text of center. Then this one is set. We can now try now to use our post slice. You can use it here, our post slice. Maybe I can expand this. This our post slice. We can now use here. You can now use it at the post. So I'm going to import something called fetch post, like that. Import useSelector. Not from React Next navigation, useSelector. From Redux Toolkit. Then I can now say import from this. Can now come here and fetch, import useDispatch. That way. Import. No, there's no need of that. I can say const useSelector let us do object destructuring, so that useSelector is going to receive a state. From this state we are going to use useSelectors. We use useSelectors to select something from the useSelectors to select something from the store. Then we are going to select posts. From these we need some various data post. From these we need of course I've not provided the type here, but I had provided already in the store. I had already provided this type. So with that said, I can navigate back and import root state from store. Then I can now give it here root state. That way I can say post, can import status from our store, can get an error. With that one, we need to convert this one into a client component. Use client. Then after converting that one, we need now to fetch use effect. That way, need now to dispatch dispatch. No. Let's do what? Import const dispatch is equals to useDispatch. Then I'm going to say dispatch what fetch post as any, that way, as any, but it's more better if we give this one a type, but there's no, you can just use as any as for the moment. Then with this one set, I have now dispatched this action. After dispatching this one, I have now fetched. What is happening is I have now fetched this post, but there's something called dependency array. We have to put it here. What will make our data to be fetched again if maybe dispatch has been altered, has been maybe touched. So with that one set, we can maybe display our data here. Can display our data here. Can come up with that a small div there. And for that reason, we have to check whether this post actually has data. You have to check whether that post has data. So you can say post length. If say let us first give it a small loading state. You can say status. If this status is equals to loading, that status is equals to loading. I'm going to return something. You say p, the data is still loading. You can maybe put some 3 dots there. Then with this we can say if the data is not loading, what do we have to do? We have to check whether this post is greater than 0. Is greater than 0. And if this data is greater than 0, that means this array is not empty. You can now come here and display it. I'm using Prettier code formatter for formatting. If you're interested with it, you can click here at extensions and install it. You can just install it. So with that, I want to render this data. I want to see whether is really anything here. Let's refresh. The data is still loading. I don't know where that error is coming from. Iteration failed. Let's see. Let me first conclude. Let's first render the data so that JSON.stringify post null then 2. Then we have the data there. This is our data. Then what do I have to do with this data? I can maybe say flex direction. I can now come here and say flex column call, so that it can shift it this way. And you see everything is okay. Now I had decided this age. You can now remove it and say age is equals to 100%. That way. At least it can be draggable. That, or I can maybe remove the age. Remove the age. Then I can now put our text here. I can give it text center. Now this is our data. We have used our store to to fetch this data. This is our data here. But now when I come here and I come JSON TP code post, if I click this, I see this data is up to what? Let me see. It's up to 100. I could just have added navigation, but it's not too many. I could just have added pagination, but the data, we can just work with it as it is. So what do I have to do? Let us render this data in a table instead of using this way. Instead of using this format, I can say diff. We're going to place this table in a diff table. Then with this table, I'm going to come up with the table header, table head, and this table head, I'm going to come up with the table R. I'm going to come up with the table D. Then I say this is table data. The first one will be user ID. The second one will be ID. The third one will be title. The fourth one will be body. That way. That one is set already. Can now check what is happening. Then I can maybe reduce the size to 100. With that one set, I can now come and define the table body. T-body. That one I can say TR, because we need now to iterate this data. How do we do that iteration? We need to iterate that data. So we say return there's no need of using that. We can say post dot map. What are we mapping? We are mapping a post. Then we can do that, and we can say return tr. From this tr we need a td, and then some several td like that. And with this td we can say post dot user id. Can say post dot id. Can say post. Can see that our data is reflecting post dot title, post dot body. And everything is set. You can look at our data has been displayed. Maybe you can style it. You can give it some very cool styling. Can give it some very cool styling. Can go to globals. Can give it a margin. Yeah, everything we had set that already. Can come here and say you can copy this, cut it, come up with another container and paste it here inside. Then I can come to this container, give it a class, and I give it maybe padding X, padding horizontally. I give it something like the rear end so that it will not touch the edges, not be at the edges. Then I can now come here and say class border collapse, and I can say class bg, give something like neutral 300. Then I can give this on a padding y. Can give it something like 0.3 rem, 0.2 rem, then padding X, can give it something like 0.5 rem. Then I can give it that one is okay. Can give this one text of white. Maybe I can remove this one and give it something like a blue, something like still blue, that is almost 700, 800. Then with that one, I can copy this, paste here, paste here, paste here. Can also copy that one and paste here, paste here, paste here, paste here, paste here. That one set, I can give it maybe border B, let's say neutral 300, supposed to be border neutral 300. Then I can copy this and give here, give each here. With that one, at least we have something which is something that looks decent. We can now work with this. We can maybe reduce the font. I can reduce the font of this title so as they can look, can come here and say text small. And also give this class name, class text. I give it something like small. That one, this data is now workable with. We need this one. Let's see, can give it a max width. Can give it something like 100 pixels. Let's see. That way. Let me give it something like 80. That way. That data now this data is okay. In the next tutorial, I'll be speaking about pagination, and maybe you can see how we can do pagination so that we can prevent this. When I'll be handling backend using Next.js, you can maybe choose to handle pagination, but let's just work with it at the moment as the way it is. Now, I want to do this. When I click this, I want to be able to capture. When I click this, I want to be able to capture, to navigate to another page, which is going to give me this post as per the ID using the single post method we used. So how do we do with that? How do we go with that? We can now say, can now come here, inside this, we create another folder and we give it a format like looks like that. Then with this we can say page.tsx, and this I can say that way. Can remove this. With that one set, I can now come here and import. First of all, before you go there, you can now come to this page, and you say on click. We want to add an on click here. So it's going to be on click. On click, what will be happening? Const enter open single post. And to const open single post, then I'm going to give it an ID, of course, of type number. Then I'm going to return open single post. I'm going to return import use router. Then with this I can say const router is equals to use router. This one I can now say const router is equals to use router. I can say router dot push. I want to navigate post. Then from this post, I want to navigate into post dot the ID number that we are given, ID, that way. Now this undo single page post, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add it here. I'm going to say undo. I'm going to navigate to post. Let's see first what will happen if I come back here to JSONPlaceholder and I put 1 and I put maybe 3. 3 is this, it's beginning, so let me just reduce it. 3 is this, so you are working with this ID, okay, so you can maybe use, you can say post dot ID, that way. With that one set, I think is now okay. Let's wait it to refresh. Okay, next router was not mounted. Let's see. Supposed to be use router from next navigation. But I still loading. I don't know, is this, I'll check on that one. Let's first look at this. Then if I click this, what's happening? Okay, it's working. So if I click this, okay, you can now see it's navigating. You can maybe do this, add a button here. Just add a button. Can come with this. Let it just be single there. Can now come with this here. Can say button C post. I can maybe give it class of padding X. I give it 1. Padding Y is something like 0.2, 2.3, and I give it a BG of orange, rows 500, border radius rounded. Let me give you something like 30 pixels. Text to white. That one set, I can now pull this this on click from this point. I can bring it here. With that one set, I can now say cursor pointer. That one set, you see everything is okay. I can maybe use this. Everything is navigating. Can open this. Everything is working. Then with that set, we can now go to our page. Now go to this page of ours there. Can now say import use params from next navigation. Then I can now say const ID is equals to use params. What's let's see, it's never read. Let's see, that way. File use params. You're importing a component that needs use params. This React hook works in a client component. Can now change here and you make it use clients. Use client. That one is set. Let me see what's wrong with these errors. Let's first clear these and maybe. So it's I'll learn to this. Iteration failed because the server entered HTML, not the client. The result this tree will be. Don't know why that error keeps on popping. Service running well. Okay, so when you see this one works properly, if I go to 4, 5, if I go to 6, everything is working okay. So what do I do? What I will do, I now come here and I say import useSelector. Import fetch single that, and I'm going to say use effect from React. Then I say this is going to change if the ID changes. I can now come and say import useDispatch from React Redux. Then I can now say const dispatch is equals to useDispatch that way. Then with this I can say dispatch is going to be after this dispatch I'm going to fetch let me remove this thing. I'm going to fetch single post, then it's going to be ID, then of course this one is going to be as any. Let me see what's happening here. Argument, let's see, of type. Okay, let me show you how we do this. I say if ID, this one should happen, but this one is a string, I should be number. So I say number ID. Supposed to be number ID that way. Then I can now say const single, can now say single, we can now fetch the single users. Say useSelector state dot single state dot post. Of course we had a defined root state that way. Then you can now say single post that one can now say here use state root state, and if I open post slice by open post slice is a single post. It is. So what I have to do now, I have now to come and carry the status so that I can track the loading. This one set, I can now remove this and I can say can now say class flex justify center, like that. Class flex justify center. With that one, what do we now do? We do this. I check if a single post has something. Single post. If this single post is not null, what should now happen? Or let's say if status dot loading, if status is equals to loading, I want to say the data is loading. The data is loading. That data is, if now the data is not loading, what do you have to do? We return, let's say first we want to see the value of the data. I can now come here and say how the data maybe looks like. I can now say what? Can now say JSON dot pass JSON dot stringify stringify what? Single post, that way, then null, then 2. The data is loading, then the data has been displayed. Let me refresh it back again. The data is loading, then the data has been displayed. With this, I can maybe come and say have user ID. I can now come and say, maybe come up with a very small table. Say table. Say there's no need of doing that. Say diff table. This table we have to do header, then I have to do td for of them. Then of course this one is going to have user ID, user ID, and this is going to receive ID, and this is going to receive title, and this is going to receive body. Then with that one set, I can now say tbody. I can now say tr. This tbody can say td is equals to single post dot user ID. That one is okay, is okay. Then I can maybe copy it, then I can do ID, then I can do title, and I can do body. That said, I can now come back here to page, our initial page, and I can copy this. I can copy this data, our page here. I can come to this page of post. I can copy this data, With this, I can maybe just copy it that way. I can copy, maybe copy this class. And I can copy this other class and paste it, then I can copy this, class here, paste it, and with that I can maybe close those files, Then this I can give it class name be text, can maybe say text small, that way, and everything is set now, and that is our data. If the user's data, maybe increase this and say maybe you need a padding, class padding, you need a padding of x3 rem. Then I can increase say maximum, say width 80 pixels. That one set, everything is working all right. That one set, everything is okay. So I can maybe go back. If I come back here, our data is loading, then I don't see these errors here, and I don't know why they are. They keep on coming because I don't see them here in console here. So if these are posts, but this is generally how you do state management. So you can maybe see post there, you can click this and the post is there. You can also click this, you can see your post. You can also click this, you can see your post. So with that one set, that is how generally you work with your APIs. There is also another way. This dispatch, you should give it a type. You should not use this way, but this one is the best way. You can now come here and say const export type app dispatch is equals to for type of store.dispatch. Then with this one, you can now come here and say hooks. Now create a folder, you call it hooks. Then say use dispatch. You give it something like tsx, like that. Use dispatch, and you give it something like that. Then you say import app dispatch. App dispatch from the store. Then you can say const use dispatch this way. Const use dispatch is equals to dispatch. Can now say import use dispatch. So can now say use dispatch here, use dispatch. This one set, you can use dispatch, you can display app dispatch. I don't have two dispatches here. Use app, okay, use app dispatch. Then you can now say app dispatch this way. You can say app dispatch this way. And with that, now we have completed that, and we can now say export use app dispatch. And with that one set, you can now import it here. Import it here. You can now import app use app dispatch. And with this one, you can now come and let's use it here. Post, can now come say use app dispatch, that way, use app dispatch. And this use app dispatch here, you can now come and eliminate this, and you say use app dispatch, that way. Then with that one, you have of course to remove this any. Oh, what's wrong? Use app. Let's just put it that way. We'll explain that one in a more way in another video that I'm coming up with, that will be dealing with more state management, so that we can grasp this thing and master it. You see, but that's how generally this stuff works like. That's how generally this stuff works like. Let me refresh page. Let's see. See. Miss. Maybe restart the server again. Don't know what had broken up. So let me refresh and see. I don't know what had brought that error. So it's okay. It's that way. So that's how we do this state management. In the next video, I will explain more advanced state management, so that you can maybe now you pass data, how you do that, how you can use something like local storage to manipulate your data. This one is very critical when it comes to building an application. If you have not mastered the state management, you may never build any meaningful application. So it's everything is also understandable. I'll also be having another video whereby I'll be speaking about use context API, and maybe